What is up, guys? Counting the hours before Borderlands 3 Kackis here. Thank you so much for stopping by, and today, leading up to Shadowkeep, a lot of Destiny 2 players are wondering, what should I be doing? How should I be preparing? And that is an extremely broad subject. There's a lot of things you can do, but one of those things is to shore up your exotic collection. Xur is going to appear in the game a few more times before Shadowkeep. There's definitely some grinding in terms of just hoping for exotic drops to happen, as well as specifically going after certain exotic quests. And so that's why today I've compiled a list of exotics that I think are really good to have for Shadowkeep. This is not just a list of the best exotics in the game currently. In fact, far from it. Some of these exotics aren't seeing a lot of play right now, but due to some of the changes that we know are coming with Shadowkeep, are likely to jump up potentially into the top of the meta. And so, let's get started. By the way, if it's a random drop, I'll tell you guys, and if there's an exotic quest associated with it, I'll have my exotic quest guide pop up in a card when I go over it. Alright, so the first gun we're looking at, let's start with primary weapons here, is an old exotic quest guide weapon from vanilla Destiny 2, and that is the MIDA multi-tool. I'm sure a lot of you vets out there have this gun, but for a lot of players who started around Forsaken, you may have been ignoring the vanilla Destiny exotic quests, but this is definitely one to do. Why? Well, anytime scout rifles have been good in Destiny, the MIDA multi-tool has been one of the most powerful PvP weapons. It has very good overall perks, it belongs to a great archetype, it has great stats, and scout rifles are 100% being buffed with Shadowkeep, and if that impacts this archetype especially, and if scout rifles become part of the PvP meta, the MIDA will also become part of that meta. It's already decent right now, and it's poised to get even better. And the quest to get it is pretty easy these days. Moving on from there, speaking of scout rifles, another one, which is a random drop, is the Jade Rabbit. This is another one of those guns that, depending on the map and depending on the skill of the user, you can have people absolutely massacre with the Jade Rabbit. It kills pretty darn fast, and its exotic perk means that you don't have to go for just headshots. Now, I don't think this is going to be as good as the MIDA multi-tool, but again, when scouts get buffed, this could ride the wave into suddenly being a very good gun in PvP. Worth getting if you see it. Moving on from there, in the primaries still, we have another exotic quest one. This one isn't quite as easy. It's the OUTBREAK Perfected. Now, this is one of the most powerful exotics in the entire game. This is arguably the best primary exotic in the entirety of Destiny 2. It is so good. Its damage output rivals power weapons, and this is just something that's an extremely safe bet to get, because depending on the activity you're doing within Shadowkeep, there's a lot of different PvE stuff coming out. The OUTBREAK Perfected, combined with 5 other OUTBREAK Perfecteds, with your teammates, can output so much damage so consistently because it's a primary weapon. It doesn't rely on, heavy ammo drops luckily happening within the game, that this thing could be absolutely in the meta. It's already been in the meta. It's already one of the best guns you can be using in PvE activities, especially because this thing is great at DPS over a longer period of time. And because the way you're able to use buffs and debuffs is changing with Shadowkeep, that massive upfront DPS, like getting all your damage out in the first 5 seconds of a DPS phase, that's kind of going away because you can't stack as many buffs and so on. So that consistent DPS provided from weapons like this is going to be getting more useful. So keep that in mind as well. Now, continuing with primary weapons, we have 2 more, the Sunshot and the Graviton Lance. Now, all of you guys will pretty much have one of these because you can choose one or the other within the original Destiny 2 campaign. But if you see the other one pop up randomly like in Xur's inventory, go ahead and get it. And that's because both of these guns are confirmed to be getting buffs with Shadowkeep. The Sunshot is going from 8 rounds in a magazine all the way up to 12, that's a big deal, and the Graviton Lance is getting a 30% damage buff in PvE. Now, will these guns become top tier? I'm not sure, but they will be getting 100% better than they are right now, so again, worth grabbing them. And next up, we have the Polaris Lance Scout Rifle. This is an exotic quest weapon, and why is this here? Well, just like the other scout rifles, it's poised to be getting better with the scout rifle buff. It's already not bad right now, but more importantly, it's because of that exotic perk. Essentially, whenever you get a headshot, a precision shot with the Polaris Lance, you get that ammo back. So you can, if you're landing constant headshots, go infinite with the Polaris Lance. Never run out of ammo, never have to stop shooting, just constant damage. Now, because of the way that they are changing instant reload abilities like the Lunafaction Boots and the Titan Rally Barricade with Shadowkeep, you will, with those things, have to reload your weapon. It won't just instantly give you ammo back. And so therefore, basically the Polaris Lance and its exotic perk will be one of the only ways to have that constant damage and never have to reload. And if there's a certain activity that requires that requires constant DPS, even though it's a primary weapon and it's going to be out DPS by other things, it's worth stocking up on just in case you're going to need it. There are some activities out there where you just plant yourself in a head glitch essentially and just shoot with the Polaris Lance, and if there's no time limit, like, you're good to go. You will kill whatever thing you're shooting at. It's just gonna take a decent amount of time, and if we have an activity like that in Shadowkeep, the Polaris Lance could be the best thing for a certain activity or exotic quest, or who knows. Alright, now moving on from there to the special weapons. Firstly, we have the IZANAGI'S Burden Sniper Rifle. Now this is acquired through a pretty long exotic quest. Unfortunately, I didn't do a guide for it because it came out on my honeymoon, but this is definitely worth getting. Why? Well, its exotic perk lets you reload the weapon and put all 4 rounds into one super powered shot. Especially now that it got a exotic catalyst from doing Heroic Menagerie. Like, once you beat Heroic Menagerie the first time, you're guaranteed to get the exotic catalyst for this gun, and the exotic catalyst adds like 20-25% more damage to its super powerful shot. And like I said earlier, the way that instant reloading works is changing. Now you will need to reload. So those abilities like Lunafaction Boots, instead of putting those rounds just into your magazine, you will reload super fast. Well, right now the IZANAGI'S Burden is kind of a non-bow with the current instant reload things, because you have to do that reload animation to get that super powered shot. So the changes to those things are actually going to help the IZANAGI'S Burden out a ton, because you're going to be able to benefit from those insane reload speeds when you do that super powerful shot and then just shoot one after the other in super quick succession. So this goes from kind of being a non-bow with those things, Lunafaction Boots and Rally Barricade, to a huge combo coming with Shadowkeep. And because of that, this may jump up to one of the best DPS weapons in the game for PvE. So yeah, this is something to definitely get a hold of. Alright, next up we have some power weapons, and firstly we have the Prospector Grenade Launcher. This is a random drop, but it's generally one of the easier things to get. A lot of people probably have this, but it may be located just stashed in your vault. Yeah, this thing I think is going to be really good. Why? Well, grenade launchers are some of the best overall DPS weapons in the entire game. Bungie has actually gone on record and said that they're not nerfing them for Shadowkeep, so they're probably still going to be insane for damage output in PvE. And the Prospector is in a unique position because it's already insane for DPS, but it wasn't quite top tier because it wasn't void, and so it didn't work with the 50% damage bonus from the tractor cannon. Well, the tractor cannon is being nerfed in Shadowkeep, and now it's just going to be 30% overall damage increase to any element. So the Arc Prospector suddenly now is going to be pretty top tier. Not to mention it gets 8 rounds in a magazine before you have to reload. So unlike something like the Mountaintop, where you have to reload after every shot and it benefits massively from the current Lunafaction boots, for example, the Prospector, you don't have to reload that often. You shoot all 8 rounds, reload like once, and then 8 rounds again, and then you're pretty much out of ammo. So it's not going to be impacted by the nerfs to the instant reloading as much as some of the other grenade launchers that reload all the time are. So yeah, this thing is priced to move. Moving on from there, we have the D.A.R.C. sniper rifle. This thing, it's kind of weird because right now, it's one of the best DPS weapons in the game. In fact, when you're doing Scourge of the Past and you're damaging the boss at the very end, the D.A.R.C. is absolutely the best weapon you can use, period. But it doesn't get the love it truly deserves. You don't see it like being used that often, and when things are going to be changing in terms of the PvE meta, just stocking up on something that's proven itself to be very, very good is probably a really good idea. Not to mention that, very similar to the Prospector, because this has a pretty insane 7 rounds in a magazine, you're going to get a lot of damage out there before you need to reload with the remade, Titan Rally Barricade and stuff. So this is one of those weapons that won't be impacted as severely by the instant reload nerfs. Next up, we have the 1000 Voices, and this is here for very similar reasons to the D.A.R.C. The damage output is great. It hasn't been that top tier just because it's not void, and it benefits from the fact that you get around, 7 rounds of heavy when you're using the 1000 Voices, but it has 4 rounds in a magazine. So you really only need to reload like 1 time in a damage phase, and so it's not again going to be impacted by those instant reload nerfs very much. So again, already good, poised to get potentially better. Okay, moving on from there, we have armor, and starting us off with the Titan, the One-Eyed Mask. Look, just get this thing. It's unbelievable in PvP, and it's just probably going to stay unbelievable. Guys, I had to mention it, but moving on from there, a little bit more of an interesting pick, we have the Helm of Saint 14. This thing is like really poised to move. If you don't have this, grab this if you ever see it in Xur or so on, because this has the exotic intrinsic perk Starless Night. Enemies that enter Ward of Dawn are blinded, while allies that pass through gain an overshield. Guarding with Sentinel Shield blinds nearby enemies. So, one of the biggest buffs coming with Shadowkeep is to the Sentinel Titan, because the Ward of Dawn, the bubble, is getting Weapons of Light. Passing through the bubble in Shadowkeep gives you 35% more damage with your weapons for 15 seconds. And if you combine that with the Helm of Saint 14, it also gives you an overshield for passing through. So an overshield and 35% more damage. Holy crap, this thing is going to be really, really meta in both PvE and potentially PvP, because there's much more of a reason to use bubble in PvP with Weapons of Light. Moving on from there, for the Hunter, we have the Liar's Handshake Gauntlets. Right now there's a combo with the Liar's Handshake and the 1-2 punch perk that is spawning on a couple of shotguns out there, and you can combine those two things to kill raid bosses in seconds. Like, it's incredibly overpowered. It might get nerfed, but even if it does, it's likely to remain a pretty darn powerful combo. And the thing is, now with the Reckoning changes in terms of the loot drops, it's way more realistic for people out there to get the Reckoning shotgun, which does spawn with the 1-2 punch perk. Previously, it was so hard to get because the drop rates were so bad, and the only other one that had 1-2 punch spawned in the Crown of Sorrow raid. Like, a lot of people didn't even bother with this combo. But now that you can get access to 1-2 punch so much easier, the Liar's Handshake is the second half of the picture. So pick these up if you ever see them. And of course, do your powerful drops every week to increase your chance of getting random exotics like this. Moving on from there, we have the ORPHEUS Rig Exotic Leg Armor. So why is this here? Well, just like Sentinel Titan, the Tether Hunter is actually being buffed quite a bit. Both Mobius Quiver and Shadow Shot are getting pretty big buffs in PvE and PvP, and so ORPHEUS Rig, I think, is going to become in the meta. It Although it did get nerfed at one point, it still gets you your super back pretty darn fast. In fact, super regeneration across the board is being nerfed. So like orbs of light are going to give half the super energy with Shadowkeep that they do right now. So being able to use something like the Orpheus rig that gets you your super back is going to really help you maintain that super way more often. And you're going to want that because Tether is so much better. Not only is it turning into a one-shot kill in PvP, which is a huge buff, in PvE, the Tether debuff, the increased damage you do to the tethered enemies, now finally is going to affect heavy weapons with Shadowkeep. So right now, like you shoot a tethered enemy with the D.A.R.C.I, does nothing, like no extra damage. With Shadowkeep, it's going to do 30% more damage. Tether could become one of the best debuffs in the game, and if it does, Orpheus rigs will shoot up alongside it. Moving on from there, for the Warlock, we have the GEOMAG stabilizers. Now, this is kind of a pet favorite for me. I absolutely love these things. I think that if you ever see them being sold, get these immediately. So these will extend the duration of your Chaos Reach, and when you're about 80% charged, running will top off Chaos Reach, so it'll charge incredibly fast. That recharge is going to matter a lot more now that you're getting your super back less often and orbs matter less and all that stuff. Not to mention that because of the changes to reloads that we've talked about a million times in this video, but because that's happening, weapon DPS is gonna just naturally go down. And that means that super DPS, which a Chaos Reach plus GEOMAGs is capable of outputting a ton of damage. Like if you're doing Gambit and you have a bunch of people with GEOMAGs, like a full team of them, you can melt your Primeval like as soon as it spawns. It's ridiculous. So stuff like that may become better. Right now, it's definitely going to be more DPS to use the Swarm or the Raven than to Chaos Reach. But because of all the nerfs happening, suddenly Chaos Reach may be the thing to use in terms of DPSing with that and then switching to a weapon. So it's a pretty good investment almost to get the GEOMAG stabilizers. Moving on from there, our last exotic to get before Shadowkeep is the Phoenix Protocol exotic chest piece. Even though, like the Orpheus rigs, it was the recipient of a nerf, it's not functioning as well as it did, it's still very, very powerful. Essentially, what it does is that when you're in your well, kills and assists will charge the next well. And because supers are overall coming down in terms of utility, and because the Lunafaction boots are getting nerfed, the Phoenix Protocol is probably going to be used quite a lot more. And the Well of Radiance, although it was nerfed in a way, it was also kind of buffed in the fact that it produces 3 orbs when you use it now, and when you produce extra orbs inside the well, those used to be coded as masterwork orbs in terms of how much they would charge your allies' supers and stuff. Now they're coded as normal orbs. So Phoenix Protocol, which gets you your well back so much more, plus the fact that the well is actually impacting your allies' super regeneration quite a lot more with the extra orbs and so on, means that with the overall nerfs to how often you're getting your super, using a Phoenix Protocol or having a teammate with the Phoenix Protocol that's casting well all the time is probably going to be the best way to continue to be able to chain supers like you're chaining them right now in a post Shadowkeep environment. So this thing again is priced to move, and it's something really good to have. Guys, that's it for the video. I hope you enjoyed, found this informative, and if you did, please remember to help me out by simply rating and especially sharing this video. If you guys want to see more Destiny 2 content similar to this, don't be afraid to slap that subscribe button. If you want to get in touch with me and keep up to date with the latest channel activity, the best way is to follow me on Twitter at RickKackis. That's linked in the description down below. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day.